It's no secret that I have a lot of hot takes when it comes to movies and cartoons and animation in general, just anything of that sort. I have a lot of controversial takes regarding these sort of things, which is why I've decided, you know what would be fun? I think it would be fun if I made a video going over a few movies that everyone loves, but I don't like them all that much. Most of these movies I would probably never talk about on their own. Like, I would never make a standalone video talking about one of these movies or anything like that. A list like this is probably the only time you will see me talk about this movie. Now, something that's important to note is I don't even necessarily hate any of the movies that are on this list. I know some of y'all are gonna be disappointed in that. I know most of you were probably expecting me to be like, I think Star Wars sucks, I hate Lord of the Rings, or something like that, but no, that's not what this video is gonna be, unfortunately. These are beloved movies that I don't like, but I also don't hate them either, necessarily. Some of these movies, I will acknowledge, they're objectively great movies, they're objectively masterpieces, and yet for one reason or another, I don't like them all that much. Also, everything that I will say about the movies that are on this list, they are purely my opinion. I know there's going to be a lot of people that will disagree with me with some of these takes, but you gotta understand, this is just the way that I look at these movies, and I cannot help it at all. I'm not trying to guilt trip people for liking these movies, I'm not trying to convince them that these are actually bad movies, I'm just simply expressing why I don't love these 5 critically acclaimed movies. Well, technically there are more than 5 movies on the list, but I'm still labeling this as a top 5 regardless. Alright, I think I've delayed the inevitable long enough. Let us dive into the list. These are the top 5 beloved movies that I dislike. Let us begin. For number 5, I'm going to start off by saying that over the past few years, if you know anything about me, you would know that I've been a very vocal critic towards Disney. You would know that I have criticized Disney a lot of times before in the past. I have criticized the way that they have been in the 2020s. I've criticized the movies that they've put out in the 2020s. However, there is one modern day movie that they've put out that has managed to be exempt from the criticisms, and that's going to change today. Number 5 is Encanto. Right off the bat, I'm going to admit, out of every modern Disney movie that they have put out post Moana, this is easily the best one. Now, I've made it clear before in the past that I think Moana from 2016 is to date the last great movie that Disney has put out. Every movie that they've put out post Moana has ranged from mediocre to straight up awful. It's very telling to me the fact that what is currently the last great Disney movie was followed up 2 years later with what is easily the worst Disney movie, and it's been all downhill ever since. However, I have seen people say that Encanto, in comparison, is a fluke. It is the best movie from Disney in a long time. The best modern Disney movie from the 2020s. And yeah, I admit it, this is the best modern Disney movie. When you compare this to Strange World and Wish, this is a much better movie. And yet I can't help but feel that, like, I don't know, this movie isn't anything special. A big problem that I and so many other people have with Disney's modern day movies is just how generic they feel. These are generic, unremarkable movies that they don't feel special at all. They don't have that Disney magic. They don't have that fresh feel that, like, the Disney Renaissance had, for example. And they're also extremely forgettable movies. Can anyone tell me what happens in Raya and the Last Dragon? Exactly. That's what I thought. Nobody remembers what happens in Raya and the Last Dragon. It is a forgettable nothing burger of a movie. Wish at least has the slight advantage of, like, you could make fun of it. You could make fun of how bad the songwriting is. You could make fun of the fact that this was supposed to be a culmination of Disney's 100-year anniversary, which was a massive disaster in of itself. You know, you can make fun of Wish in certain aspects, But overall, when you look past that, it's just a generic, forgettable movie, and that's it. Encanto, I don't want to say is a generic movie. It's not the most amazing, unique movie I've ever seen either, but I don't think generic is the right word to describe this movie. But it's also not anything to really write home about. There's nothing wrong with this movie. I don't have any problems with it. There is nothing to make me think that this movie is bad. I just don't see the modern classic that everyone else sees. This movie is decent, and that's it. This movie is not on the same level as like the Disney Renaissance or the early to mid 2010s Disney movies like Tangled and Wreck-It Ralph and whatever. It's not on that same level. I'm sorry. I just think the movie is decent more than anything else, and I don't see what the big deal is with this movie. I think the main problem that I had with this movie was just how overexposed it was in late 2021 going into 2022. I think this movie had a very limited theatrical run. It didn't do all that well theatrically because we were still largely in the pandemic era when this came out, and then the movie would be released onto Disney Plus, and just like that, it would become an overnight sensation. Everyone would be talking about this movie. I don't want to go into too much detail about it, but in late 2021, I began to enter the early stages of my now regrettable anti-Disney phase. It was that combined with how overexposed the movie was. I couldn't go anywhere without seeing people talk about We Don't Talk About Bruno. People were really trying to make this song the next Let It Go, which, dear God, no. I don't think we appreciate enough the fact that this song did not become the next Let It Go. We're not grateful enough for that, seriously. This song, and the movie as a whole, was practically inescapable in late 2021 and early 2022, and then by the summer of 2022, we all collectively decided, nah, this song wasn't cool anymore. This movie's not cool anymore. Let's move on to something else instead. And I am grateful for that. I'm sorry. In an alternate universe where this movie's overexposure lasted for a much longer period of time, I wouldn't think, this movie's decent, but I don't think it's a masterpiece like everyone else says it is. No, I would think this movie is garbage, and I hate hearing about it every single day. Now the good thing is, I very rarely heard We Don't Talk About Bruno on the radio at the time. Maybe like 3 or so times, and that's it. And every time I would just either turn off the radio or I would switch to a different station because I knew, yup, this song was gonna be inescapable. Better take precautions in advance. I know this might sound like a crazy thing to take in for some of you, for whatever reason, but yes, overexposure can and will negatively affect the way that a person looks at something, even if the thing that's being overexposed is objectively good. I have seen people say, you can't hate a song just because it's overplayed. Why the f*** not? Why can't I say a song is bad just because it's overplayed? I don't want this to come off as being like a lay wrong generation thing, but the late 2010s was an absolutely terrible time for pop music. I mean, there were good songs here and there, but there was also a lot of dog shit music as well, and a lot of this dog shit music would be played to death on the radio stations. This obviously doesn't mean much now, considering the fact that pop music is actually good again, thanks to the likes of Chappell Roan and Sabrina Carpenter and whatever. But every now and then I hear Shape of You come on the radio or while I'm at a grocery store, and just like that, the memories start kicking back in to haunt me yet again. Overexposure can and will negatively affect the way that people look at something, regardless of if the thing that's being overexposed is good objectively. And Encanto was a movie that was negatively affected to me just because of how overexposed it was, especially since I watched the movie and I didn't think it was bad, but I didn't think there was anything really special about it either. It felt like I was missing something. Given the fact that no one really cares about this movie anymore, like I don't see anyone talk about it. We Don't Talk About Bruno is obviously not the pop culture phenomenon that it once was. I think yeah, I could rewatch this movie and maybe I'd reevaluate it a little bit. I don't think I will ever find this movie to be a masterpiece or anything particularly special. I'd probably look at it as just a perfectly fine movie and that's it. Again, this is easily the best modern Disney movie. This is easily the best post-Moana Disney movie. But that's not really saying much when the movie is still a 6 out of 10 at most. Here is hoping Zootopia 2 ends up being the movie that will end this streak of mediocrity that Disney's been putting out for the last couple of years. Or, alternatively, Zootopia 2 could end up continuing the streak. Or, alternatively, Zootopia 2 could end up being a fluke. It ends up being a really good movie, and then all of the post-Zootopia 2 movies will be a return to the mediocrity that we're stuck with. Things are looking very bleak for Disney in a lot of different aspects, including their animated movies. But with all that said, let us move on to number 4. Alright, so for number 4, people are going to be asking, bro, seriously, you're that kind of person? And I regret to inform you all that yes, I am indeed that kind of person. Number 4 is a tie between the Avatar movies. First and foremost, I'm just gonna say, yes, I'm sorry, but these movies have not left behind any sort of impact on movie history or pop culture. Avatar is the highest grossing movie of all time, and yet I've never seen anyone talk about this movie. I don't see people talk about this movie in the same way they talk about Star Wars or Back to the Future or Indiana Jones or Harry Potter or The Lord of the Rings or any of these other franchises, you know? This feels like something that should be considered on the same level as those other movies, and yet it just isn't. I don't think Avatar is a bad movie, but it is not highest grossing movie of all time levels of good. I've got to admit, the first time I watched this movie was shortly before The Way of Water came out, because I knew that was going to be a massive movie. I was too young for the first Avatar when it came out in late 2009, and I never got to saw it as a result of that. A funny story, when I was a kid, I used to be scared of movie theaters for some reason, and it was around when the first Avatar came out that I had this fear, this really stupid childhood fear. So I see that we're finally getting an Avatar sequel after seemingly forever, and that makes me curious to see what the big deal is with the first Avatar. I was well aware that, yeah, it is the highest grossing movie of all time, but then I was also aware of the discourse surrounding this movie where it's the highest grossing movie of all time, but it's left behind no cultural impact, you know, that sort of thing. I remember back in 2019, there was that whole thing of like having Avengers Endgame surpass Avatar as the highest grossing movie of all time, and I'm sorry to all the film bros and cinephiles that are watching this, but Endgame is actually a movie that's left behind an impact on pop culture. I know I'm going to get a lot of ridicule for saying this, but I genuinely believe that the Tony Stark snap scene near the end of the movie, that is the modern day equivalent to I Am Your Father from Empire Strikes Back. If you disagree with me, well, try and find a scene from a modern movie that could also fit the description of being the modern day I Am Your Father. Go ahead. I'll wait. I've got all day. I'll admit it, in retrospect, the Endgame versus Avatar stuff isn't really as satisfying as I remember it being, considering the fact that these are both Disney movies. It didn't matter who won, because at the end of the day, Disney would be the winner. But still, getting back on topic, I watched Avatar for the first time. I'm curious to see what the deal is with this movie. And much like with Encanto, I watched the movie and I think, this is fine, but like, what's so special about it? I didn't hate the movie. Hell, much like Encanto, I thought the movie was decent, but I didn't think it was highest grossing movie of all time levels of good. The movie looked absolutely gorgeous. The movie had amazing visuals, but That was really it. That was all that it had going for it. The storyline was fine. I'm not saying it's bad, the storyline, but it's nothing special. For being the highest grossing movie of all time, I would have expected this to be like, a monumental movie or something like that. Again, this feels like a movie that should be on the same league as Star Wars or Indiana Jones or Back to the Future or whatever, Harry Potter, that sort of thing. And yet it's just not on that level. It's way more successful than any of these movies, but it doesn't have that same sort of punch to it that those movies have. And as a result of that, it doesn't have the same pop culture impact that those movies have. And I get it, a movie doesn't need to have an impact on pop culture in order to be good, and that would be fine if we weren't talking about the highest grossing movie of all time. The best-selling album of all time is an album that's actually made an impact on music history and pop culture. The best-selling video game of all time is a game that has actually made an impact on gaming history and pop culture. Why can't the same thing happen for the highest grossing movie? There's also the fact that the other two things are much stronger in comparison. However you may feel about Michael Jackson and his many controversies, Thriller is objectively an amazing album. Billie Jean and Beat It and the title track are all amazing songs, objectively. Looking past the memes surrounding the movie, Minecraft is a genuinely fantastic game. It has given people tons and tons of nostalgia, and it's no surprise that over 15 years later, the game is still being played by millions of people on a daily basis. Avatar is a movie that it exists and that's it, There's nothing wrong with it. It's a perfectly fine, perfectly serviceable movie. But not once when I watched this movie did I think, yeah, this deserves to be the highest grossing movie of all time. It's just simply not on that level. To be honest, this movie feels like the kind of movie where it's like, I watch it just for the sake of saying I watched it, Just to get that weird non-existent validation in saying, yeah, I've watched Avatar, finally. I've watched the highest grossing movie of all time. I don't watch it to love it and become a huge fan of it or anything like that. I just watch it just to get that non-existent validation of knowing that I finally watched the highest grossing movie of all time, even if I don't necessarily think it deserves to be the highest grossing movie of all time. Let me go ahead and say that I don't think this movie should be a box office flop or anything like that. I wish this movie bombed at the box office, nothing like that. Maybe $1 billion is one thing. I know that was kind of uncommon when this movie first came out. The idea of movies making $1 billion would become a much bigger thing in the 2010s. But I don't know, man. Does this really deserve to be the highest grossing movie of all time? More accurately, does this deserve to still be the highest grossing movie of all time? I would understand it if this movie briefly held that title in the early 2010s and then it would lose that title to another movie. Which movie would have hypothetically garnered that title? I don't know. Any movie between Avatar and Avengers Endgame, take your pick. But damn, having this movie still be the highest grossing movie of all time it would be impressive if, number one, the movie was a masterpiece, and number two, it's left behind a massive impact on film history and pop culture, but it's not a great movie. It's not bad. It's far from bad. It's just average more than anything else. And it's not made any sort of impact on movie history or pop culture. There was an episode of Johnny Test that came out in 2011 that parodies the movie. I think that's the most cultural impact Avatar has ever had. You look at this movie and you compare it to other movies that have held the title for highest grossing movie of all time, and it's Jaws has made an impact on both movie history and pop culture. Star Wars: A New Hope has made an impact on both movie history and pop culture. E.T. has made an impact on both movie history and pop culture. Jurassic Park has made an impact on both movie history and pop culture. Fellow James Cameron movie, Titanic, has made an impact on both movie history and pop culture. So anyone that thinks I hate James Cameron or his movies just because I don't care for Avatar, yeah, consider yourselves debunked just like that. Film bros and cinephiles are gonna hate my guts for saying this, but I don't care. Avengers Endgame has made an impact on both film history and pop culture, and if it hasn't made an impact on either one, it will eventually. Well, I'd say it's already made an impact on pop culture. It's only a matter of time before film bros let their recency bias go away, and they accept that, yeah, this movie is on the same league as like Star Wars and Back to the Future and Harry Potter and all those other movies. Look at how many people talk about these movies, and then look at how many people talk about Avatar, and you're gonna see a massive difference. The idea that like this movie is far more successful than any of these movies, even though I've seen far more people talk about these movies when compared to Avatar. As I've mentioned before, I watched this movie for the first time just to prepare myself for Avatar: The Way of Water. Now, I've already established I don't really care for Avatar all that much. I don't think it's a terrible movie, but it's not amazing either. Here I am hoping that Avatar: The Way of Water would be a much better movie than the first Avatar. 13 years had passed between the first Avatar and this movie, and so I expect this to be a genuine masterpiece. I expect this to be a great movie. So I go into the movie theater excited to watch this movie. I'm not gonna lie, it felt a little bit awkward going into the theaters to see this movie. The auditorium was probably filled with people that were waiting for this movie for God knows how long. People who probably did watch the first Avatar when it came out in 2009. And then here I am, having just watched the first Avatar the night before. But that's beside the point. I get ready for this movie, and I'm sorry, this movie is boring. I'm sorry. The first Avatar was like a little bit boring, but it wasn't like terrible or anything like that. I didn't hate it. This movie, I don't think it's terrible either, but good God, is it boring. I genuinely could not tell you what happens in this movie. Nothing happens in this movie. Like, story-wise, this movie is just unremarkable. Visually, this movie is gorgeous. I will not deny that at all. Even the people that don't like these movies, they can acknowledge that, yeah, they're amazing visually. The movie is called The Way of Water, and so obviously it would focus a lot on water. It would have a very like aquatic feel to it, and the water looks so gorgeous to look at. Everything, I love the way that it looks, but I'm not gonna give the movie a 10 out of 10 just because I love the way that the water looks. The movie has gorgeous visuals, and then like it's just kind of average from a storyline perspective. I genuinely could not tell you what the hell happens in this movie. I could still remember a little bit of the first movie's plot. I could not tell you what this second movie is about. And then just like that, the movie would also go on to make $2 billion, becoming the 4th highest grossing movie of all time. And much like the first movie, I've very rarely seen people ever talk about this movie. Yeah, I guess I've seen like a few memes here and there for the movie, but then that's it. I don't see anyone bring this movie up in like casual film conversations or anything like that. I've seen people defend these movies and the fact that like they make a lot of money but no one really cares about them. I've seen people defend that by saying like these movies aren't about the story, they're about the visuals. People don't go for the story, they go for the visuals. And it's like, bro, every movie in existence is all about the storyline. Everything about a movie is built around its storyline. The storyline is the most important aspect of any movie ever. From a storyline perspective, they're just so average. They're fine, and that's it. They're not bad, but like, you know, highest grossing movie of all time and 4th highest grossing movie of all time, I don't know about that one, Chief. The thing is, though, I do think that these movies have the potential to be amazing. I think these movies have the potential to be genuine masterpieces. I've brought up frequently that Avatar feels like the kind of thing that should have the same reputation as Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and whatever, and like I could see that genuinely. I could see an alternate universe where these movies are held in the same regard as Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. The 3rd Avatar movie, Fire and Ash, is expected to come out later this year in December. Am I gonna watch this movie despite the fact that I don't like the first 2 movies all that much? Yeah, I am. I'm sorry. Not only because FOMO is a pain in the butt, I really do not want to miss out on what will undoubtedly be the biggest movie of the year, or at least the biggest Hollywood movie of the year. My personal opinions on the movie notwithstanding. But there's also the fact that I really do want these movies to be amazing. I want these movies to have great storylines. I can only hope that this third movie, this is going to be the first great installment for this series. This is going to be the first movie in this series to have a great storyline to accompany its beautiful visuals. This is going to be the first installment that actually feels like it deserves to make $2 billion at the box office, you know? I can only hope that's the case with this movie. And if that ends up not being the case, well, at least we have Avatar 4 to look forward to. And then if that ends up not being the case, well, we have Avatar 5 to look forward to. And then if that ends up not being the case, well, we're f***ed then. We got 5 average as hell movies that all make billions and billions of dollars. I genuinely hope that Avatar Fire and Ash could be the first great installment in this series, but sadly, I doubt it. Anyways, let's move on to number 3. For number 3, I'm gonna start this off by saying I love comedies, and I wish comedies made a comeback. With how depressing the world is right now, I think we could all use a break from the millions and millions of indie movies about depression that A24 and Neon have been giving us for quite a while now, and we see a return to the fun, escapist comedies that we got in the 90s and 2000s. But even though I love comedies, there's one thing about them that I cannot deny. Yes, some comedies have aged poorly. There are comedies that used to be considered classics, but they're no longer considered classics because they have very poorly aged things in them. Take, for example, Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. Compared to the other two 1994 Jim Carrey movies, The Mask and Dumb and Dumber, Ace Ventura: Pet Detective isn't as well regarded in retrospect, and that is because some of the jokes that are in this movie haven't aged all that well. Some of the jokes that are in this movie, in retrospect, could come off as transphobic. I'm not saying any of this to be like, oh, they're just jokes, calm down you woke snowflake liberals. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not that kind of person. I'm just acknowledging that, yeah, Ace Ventura used to be considered a classic, but now it's not considered as much of a classic because it has poorly aged stuff that's in it. But here's the thing. In the same way people can separate the art from the artist, you can separate a movie from its poorly aged elements. You can still like Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, you can still find it a funny movie, and then you can also acknowledge that the transphobic stuff in it has aged poorly. Now, I'll admit, I've never seen this movie before. I've seen The Mask and I've seen Dumb and Dumber, but I've never seen this movie before. But I'm sure that there are a lot of genuinely good, funny, non-hateful jokes that are in this movie. It's not like every single joke in this movie is transphobic. If every joke in this movie was transphobic, then the movie would never be considered a classic. It would have been hated right from the get-go. On the other hand, though, and this is just as valid, you can dislike a movie because it has poorly aged stuff in it. That is perfectly understandable. Again, it's like how separating the art from the artist. Like, sometimes you're able to do it, other times you can't. As long as you acknowledge that the shitty thing is shitty, you should be fine. Whether you're able to still enjoy the piece of media looking past the shitty thing about it, that's a completely different story. If you can do it, that's great. If you can't do it, that's fine as well. You can still like a movie, even if it has poorly aged stuff in it, as long as you acknowledge that, yeah, the poorly aged stuff is a poorly aged. But then also at the same time, you can dislike a movie because it has poorly aged stuff in it. Both of these are valid. And the latter is how I feel when it comes to 1988's Beetlejuice. Yeah, That's right. I don't like Beetlejuice all that much. I'm sorry. I never watched this movie when I was a kid, which I think is for the better, honestly. The first time I ever watched this movie was in 2023 when I was staying at someone else's house. I was staying at a family member's house for the night, and they decided to put on this movie. And I decided, yeah, sure, we'll watch it. Why the not. I've never seen this movie. I've heard this movie's a classic. Sure, we'll watch it. I cannot remember what I initially thought of this movie when I first watched it, but I do remember not finishing the movie because it was like late at night when we started watching it, and I was tired and I wanted to go to sleep, so we turned off the movie and I went to bed, and that was it. I never finished the movie. That was my introduction to Beetlejuice. And so next year, 2024, there's a Beetlejuice sequel coming out. And I know this movie is just another typical legacy sequel, a movie that'll just come and go, a much too late movie that should have come out in the early 90s. Whether it'll be good or bad won't matter because it'll probably just be largely ignored and forgotten about. Most people will forget about its existence, much like with tons and tons of other legacy sequels. But even then, I was still interested in seeing this movie, and so, much like with Avatar, I went out of my way to buy the first movie, and to finish it to see what the deal was with this movie. I figured it wouldn't hurt to have a refresher for what this movie was like. Much like with Avatar, the night before I watched Beetlejuice, I would watch the first Beetlejuice. And I could very easily tell you that, I didn't enjoy the movie all that much upon rewatch. I don't remember what I thought of the movie when I partially watched it back in 2023, but I could definitely tell you what I think of the movie having finished it in 2024. Now, obviously, this movie is a comedy. This is considered a classic 80s comedy, one of the defining movies of the 80s. And yet I found myself not really laughing at the movie. I didn't think the movie was hilarious or anything like that. I just thought, it's okay, I guess, but I really expected more out of this movie. I gotta be real with y'all, the only things that I really liked about this movie were Michael Keaton's performance as the titular Beetlejuice, even with the extremely questionable things that this character does in the movie. I'll get into that in a little bit, just you wait. And I also loved the imagery in the movie. Obviously, this is a Tim Burton movie. This was like one of his first big movies. You know, it shows. It very much feels like a Tim Burton movie. And I love the imagery that this movie has. I love the way that it looks. And that's it. Those are the only things that I really liked about the movie. I didn't hate the movie or anything like that, but I just... I didn't think it was funny. I didn't find it as funny as I probably should have found it. If I watched this movie as a kid, this probably would have been like my favorite movie ever, maybe. But again, I never watched this movie as a kid, and I think it's for the better that I never watched this movie. Because what I'm about to talk about completely destroyed any chances I had of me liking this movie. It destroyed any chances of me ever going back to this movie, ever rewatching this movie a second time. I don't know how the y'all are just okay with this. I've never seen anyone say this movie is bad because of this stuff. I've never seen anyone say they don't like this movie because of this stuff. The whole thing of like, I don't think this movie is all that funny, that's fine, humor is subjective. But this right here, I don't know how anyone can defend this. I'm sorry. So the plot of Beetlejuice focuses on this couple that ends up dying. At first they don't know that they're dead, but then it becomes apparent to them that yeah, they're dead. They're ghosts that are haunting their house. And they cannot leave the house either. They're forced to stay inside of their house. And then there's this rich family that moves into the house and they plan on renovating the house. Said rich family has an adopted goth daughter played by Winona Ryder. And so the ghost couple try to get the rich family out of the house. And in order to do that, they have to consult Beetlejuice. They have to say Beetlejuice's name 3 times in order to have him help the couple scare the rich family out of their house. Okay. All of that's perfectly fine. Again, I don't think the movie is as funny as it should be, but You know, I don't hate it or anything like that. It's near the end of the movie where everything goes completely downhill. So as I mentioned before, the rich family has a daughter, a goth girl played by Winona Ryder. Both Winona Ryder herself when this movie came out and the character that she plays are underage. Near the end of the movie, Beetlejuice finds out about this girl and he immediately falls in love with her. And so the final climactic battle, I guess you could say, the climax of the movie is you have the dead couple trying to stop Beetlejuice from marrying this little girl, and it's so fucking uncomfortable to watch, and I have to wonder, like, how the they thought this was a good idea. Like, I'm so sorry, bro, but like, ain't no way y'all can defend this, alright? There's no way. Bro, I never got to this part when I first watched this movie in 2023. It was upon rewatch that I was like, what in the am I watching? This is considered a classic? Seriously? I thought the movie was just fine when I was watching it for the first half, and then this comes and it's like, nope, I don't care. I'm not watching this again. I don't like this movie. I don't know why the hell they thought this was a good idea. I'm sure, like, there are other ways they could have conveyed that Beetlejuice isn't exactly a good character. There are other ways they could have conveyed that, and instead they chose to go with the most extreme way to convey that Beetlejuice is not a good character. I get it. This movie came out in 1988. It was a different time, blah blah blah. That's not an excuse. This movie makes it very obvious that this whole thing of Beetlejuice marrying a child is a bad thing. A movie showing a bad thing doesn't mean that it encourages said bad thing. It doesn't condone it or anything like that. I get that. That doesn't make it any less uncomfortable to sit through. I'm not gonna go and be like, oh, this is perfectly fine, you know? The movie makes it obvious that this is a bad thing. That makes it less uncomfortable to sit through. No, it doesn't. It's still really uncomfortable, even if the movie makes it obvious that it doesn't support this, it doesn't condone this. Imagine watching this movie for the first time, thinking you're about to watch a wacky, silly, late 80s horror comedy, and then out of nowhere the movie hits you with the child marriage jump scare, the scariest jump scare of them all. The weirdest thing is the fact that everyone is just seemingly fine with it. This movie is still considered a classic despite this. Whenever I see people talk about movies that haven't aged all that well, I never see anyone bring this movie up, and I don't understand why. Like, there's no way y'all are fine with this. There's no way y'all are okay with this. What the fuck? And then moving a little bit further, I finished watching the movie, and before this scene, I was like, alright, I think the movie's okay, but it's not amazing. It's not a classic like everyone says it is. And then after this, I'm like, nope, this movie is not a classic. I don't know what the hell people see in this movie. But I still went and saw Beetlejuice, despite the fact that I didn't like the first movie all that much. Now, obviously, a lot of time passed between the release of the first Beetlejuice and the release of this sequel. Winona Ryder is obviously an adult now, and so naturally they would have the movie take place many years later into the future. And so now Winona Ryder's character is an adult. And a prominent theme of this movie is Beetlejuice tries to get back with this goth girl, especially after seeing that she's now an adult. Okay, so you think, oh, this is fine then, because she's an adult now, that makes it okay. No, it doesn't. I'm sorry. This is a character that tried to marry this girl when she was a child, and then many years later, he comes across her again, now as an adult, and he's still in love with her. And it's just so weird. If this whole subplot of like him being in love with this goth girl wasn't in the first movie when she was underage, if this was something they introduced into this second movie, then it's like, alright, that would be fine. But no, the added context that Beetlejuice knew this girl when she was a child. He tried to marry this girl while she was underage. It just makes this very uncomfortable to sit through. You know, this movie, again, is just kind of like whatever. It's average. You know what? F it, I'm gonna admit it. This movie is slightly better than the first movie just because it doesn't have anything as uncomfortable as the child marriage scene. But I also don't like it very much just because, like, some of the poorly aged stuff from the first movie ends up leaking onto this second movie. And so I don't like the movie all that much either because of that. Funny story, when I saw this movie, there were a lot of people that were wearing different Beetlejuice clothes and whatever. They had like Beetlejuice blankets, stuff like that. They had like just clothes on with Beetlejuice on them. And you know, I'm not trying to ruin their day for them. I'm not trying to rain on their parade or anything like that. You know, I'm happy they enjoyed the movie. I'm happy they were looking forward to it, but it just feels really weird to me given the fact that this character is canonically a like, that doesn't seem weird to y'all? Y'all are just cool with it? I don't get it. You know that whole meme where it's like, there are certain characters from movies and TV shows where it's like, people look up to them even though they're not supposed to? You know the whole, like, you miss the point if you idolize them, you know, that whole thing? People watch American Psycho and they look up to Patrick Bateman even though they're not supposed to. People watch Breaking Bad and they look up to Walter White even though they're not supposed to. People watch Taxi Driver and they look up to Travis Bickle even though they're not supposed to. You know, that sort of thing. Yeah, I'm surprised Beetlejuice isn't a part of that club. I don't know why he's not a part of this club, but he just isn't. Everyone seemingly loves this character, despite the fact that he's canonically a nunce. Like, I don't get it. The main character of one of the most beloved comedies of the 80s, if not of all time, is canonically a nunce. And we're all just fine with it for some reason. Nobody would call you a if you said that you liked Beetlejuice as a character, but if you say that you like, I don't know, Patrick Bateman for comparison, people will most likely call you a right-wing incel. I don't get what's up with that. That's just peak double standards right there. I'm not defending Patrick Bateman or anything like that. I'm not saying Patrick Bateman is a character that should be looked up to and idolized, you know. We should all aspire to be like Patrick Bateman. I'm not saying that at all. Good God, don't get me wrong. But I just find it very interesting the fact that, like, you have these two characters that have canonically done awful, inexcusable things, and yet it's considered perfectly fine to say that you like one character, but then it's considered extremely sus to say that you like another character. And I don't get what's up with that. I really don't get what's up with that at all. I understand that American Psycho is obviously not a kid's movie at all. It is an R-rated black comedy horror film. Beetlejuice, in comparison, is a much more family-friendly movie. If I had kids of my own, I would never let them watch this movie. But the general consensus is that, yeah, it's okay for kids to watch Beetlejuice. It's fine for them to watch it. I get that, okay? American Psycho is not for kids, but Beetlejuice is okay for kids to watch. I understand that. Except that just makes the problems that I have with Beetlejuice even worse when you really think about it. It would be one thing if this was some up R-rated black comedy like American Psycho, but this is a family movie. It's considered okay for kids to watch this movie. Bro had a cartoon all the way back in the early 90s, and again, it would be one thing if this was some trashy, edgy adult cartoon akin to like Beavis and Butthead or whatever, but this was a Saturday morning cartoon for kids. Children watch this show, and I just cannot wrap my head around that idea. No, seriously, what the hell is going on? Did I watch a completely different movie that the rest of y'all watched? Why am I the only one that's uncomfortable with this whole thing? Why am I the only one that doesn't like the movie very much because of this whole thing? I know there's probably gonna be someone in the comments that'll call me a woke, easily offended snowflake or whatever just because this scene rightfully makes me uncomfortable. And if you're gonna do that, then well, go the ahead. I'm not gonna try and stop you. Be my guest. But just know, by calling me a woke snowflake because this scene makes me uncomfortable, you are thereby defending this scene. And by defending this scene, well, you are indirectly telling me the kind of person that you are. If if you know what I mean. Oh yeah, by the way, there's a character in this movie, the father of the rich family, and the actor that plays him is actually a nunce. Like, I'm not even joking, I'm being 100% serious. This character is played by a genuine nunce. Like, the actor that plays him is a terrible person. So, you know, there's yet another reason why this movie hasn't aged all that well. At the same time, though, this guy also played the principal in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which, unlike Beetlejuice, is an 80s comedy that I will very easily call a classic. Although, I'm not sure how much I could be able to enjoy this movie upon rewatch, given the kind of person the principal's actor is. God damn it, man. I know, separate the art from the artist, but listen, sometimes it's easy to do it, other times it's not easy to do it. Maybe I could do it for Ferris Bueller's Day Off, but I'm not sure I could do it for Beetlejuice, given the fact that, well, this is in the movie. I'm sorry, I don't like this movie very much. I don't hate it necessarily, but it's just not as enjoyable as I would want it to be. I don't find this movie to be as funny as I expected it to be, which I'm willing to let that slide because humor is subjective, but what I will not let slide is the attempted child marriage that's at the end of the movie. I'm sorry, but that just completely destroys any chances of me ever rewatching this movie. I don't feel comfortable rewatching this movie knowing this is at the end of it. And this is a kid's movie as well, which only makes it worse. I'm sorry, I don't know what the y'all see in this movie, but I don't vibe with it at all. I don't vibe with it. I'm sorry. There's tons of classic comedies that I love, but Beetlejuice is sadly not one of them. And with all of that said, let us move on to number 2. Number 2 is a movie that I've already made a video on, and so you might think it's not fair for me to include it onto this list, but you know what? I think it's appropriate for me to just kind of repeat what I said about this movie on this list. Number 2 is Barbie. Now, unlike the other movies that are on this list, I actually have a lot of good things to say about this movie. There are a lot of positive aspects towards this movie. Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling are both fantastic as Barbie and Ken respectively. I love the set design of Barbie Land. I love the way that everything looks visually. Some of the songs from the movie's soundtrack I think are really good, with the clear standout being What Was I Made For from Billie Eilish, which is just an absolutely beautiful song. The ending of the movie, where Barbie is in this void or whatever with her creator as she learns about what it means to be a woman or whatever it was, I don't remember. But it's like a genuinely beautiful scene as well. Like, it almost moved me. When I rewatched this movie, I was like, oh damn, this is actually like kind of emotional. What the I didn't like this movie anywhere near as much upon rewatch, and then I'm at the end, it's like, holy shit, the movie does a complete 180, and now it's like an amazing movie. And I guess, yeah, if I want to get technical, this movie helped keep theaters alive during the 2023 Hollywood strikes alongside Oppenheimer, which came out the same day. Now, crazy story, I was originally going to have this be a tie between Barbie and Oppenheimer, but ultimately I decided to leave Oppenheimer out of this. I have a core reason for not liking either of these movies all that much as I should. But for the case of Barbie, I have other problems with it in regards to the movie itself. And then Oppenheimer, as far as I'm concerned, is objectively speaking a perfect movie. I cannot think of anything to really criticize Oppenheimer for besides this stupid thing that I don't even know if I want to go into detail about it in this video. For the sake of this video, I am only focusing on Barbie, the movie that I think does have flaws. Sometimes I feel like I can be a bit harsh towards this movie. I rewatched this movie back in November of 2023, and then I made an entire video on it going over my problems with it. The thing was, though, I don't even hate this movie all that much, but I just think it's really weak in comparison to like what a lot of people say about it. I know that there are a lot of people out there that felt empowered and motivated. Like a lot of women especially, they're gonna hold this movie up to a high regard, and they're gonna look at it as a masterpiece and whatnot. And you know, it's like, I'm happy for them. I'm glad that this movie is like important to them. I'm glad that it resonates with them. I'm not trying to guilt trip any woman or just anyone in general, regardless of gender. I'm not trying to guilt trip them for liking this movie. I'm not trying to convince them that no, this movie is bad, you're wrong. I don't hate this movie for anti-woke reasons. Right off the bat, I'm getting that out of the way. I don't support or watch Ben Shapiro or The Critical Drinker or The Quartering or any of these other people. I don't watch them at all. I hate talking about this movie because every time I talk about it, I have to make that explicitly clear. But getting back on topic, I know that there are a lot of like women that they'll look at this movie as like an important movie for them. You know, it resonates with them, and you know, I'm happy for them. I'm not even gonna lie, I wish I was a woman myself, so that way it's like this movie could resonate with me and I'd be able to look past like some of the problems that I have with it, because I know this could very easily go the wrong way. People could very easily get the wrong idea. I'm a guy criticizing a movie like Barbie. I know. I promise you it's not going to turn out that way. So the first problem that I have with this movie is, much like with Beetlejuice, I just don't find this movie all that funny. Now, unlike every other movie that's on this list, when I watched this movie for the first time in theaters on that titular day, July 21st, 2023, I absolutely love this movie, and I thought this movie was amazing, this movie was a masterpiece, stuff like that. In a better timeline, I would still retain this opinion about this movie, but we don't live in that timeline. I rewatched the movie in November of 2024, and I'm not even gonna lie, I just didn't find it as funny as I used to find it. I felt that like a lot of the humor that's in this movie just comes off as very like forced and awkward, like it's trying too hard to be funny. The only instances where I think the movie really works are during like the few serious moments that it has. The scene where Barbie is at the bus stop with that old woman, the scene where she's in the void with her creator, as I mentioned before. It's like the few serious moments that are in the movie are when the movie is really able to shine, but there's only like 3 of them in the entire movie, and then the rest of the movie is just unfunny to me. I'm sorry. There's a scene where Barbie meets the CEO of Mattel, who's played by Will Ferrell, and just as they prepare to put her inside of the box or whatever and send her back to Barbie Land, she asks to meet the CEO of Mattel, and then Will Ferrell's like, I'm the CEO of Mattel. And then Barbie notices that everyone that runs Mattel, everyone that runs the Barbie section or whatever of Mattel is a man. And then Will Ferrell goes on about how Mattel has had like a history with women, like a big important history with women. And it comes across as a perfect example of show, don't tell. It would be so much funnier to just have the audience notice the irony that like there's no woman that's in charge of Barbie and Mattel. It's all men. If you have to explain the joke, it's not funny. Bro, there's a specific joke in this movie that I remember being like really unfunny in retrospect. So there's like the scene where Barbie gets kicked out of her house by Ken, and then she's like sad and miserable and whatever, and then it cuts to like a fake joke commercial that's like existential crisis Barbie or whatever. I probably thought this was the funniest thing ever when I first watched it, and then I rewatched the movie and it's like, what in the what is this like nostalgia critic like skit doing in this movie, bro? This like Family Guy cutaway tier joke, man. This movie was nominated for Best Picture at the 2024 Oscars, by the way, over Across the Spider-Verse, no less, if you can believe it. You know, I'm advocating for comedies to make a comeback, and you know, this is the highest grossing comedy of all time, but like, when I say I want comedies to come back, I specifically want them to be funny as well. As much as I love comedies, I will acknowledge that there are more bad comedies than bad movies from any other genre. And bad comedies often end up being worse than bad movies from any other genre. a bad comedy is worse than a bad horror movie, a bad drama, etc. This obviously isn't anywhere near the worst comedy I've ever seen, but it's also not a very hilarious movie either. Listen, humor is subjective and all that, but still. I think I've delayed the inevitable long enough for this movie. Let's talk about the politics of this movie. Once again, I cannot clarify this enough. I am not anti-woke or anything like that. I do not think this is an anti-male movie or anything of that sort. If this was truly an anti-male movie, there wouldn't be a single male actor in this movie. Ryan Gosling, Will Ferrell, none of these actors would be in the movie if it was anti-male. There wouldn't be any male writers, male editors, nothing like that. Producers, there are men that are involved with this movie's production. Do you think any of them would want to participate in a movie that is supposedly anti-male? Honestly, be real with me. Now, I don't have a problem with the messages of the movie itself. I have a problem with the way that they're executed, and ultimately I think they could have been executed far better. So at the beginning of the movie, we're in Barbie Land, and we see the Barbies and the Kens, in which the Barbies are obviously in control. The Barbies do all of the important stuff while the Kens do nothing. And then Barbie and Ken enter the real world. Ken sees how much power men have in the real world, and so Ken leaves back to Barbie Land. And then later into the movie, when Barbie heads back to Barbie Land, she sees that now things are the other way around. The Kens are in control. The Kens do all of the important stuff, and the Barbies act as servants to the Kens. At the beginning, the movie never once implies that the Kens have any sort of issue with the way that they're treated compared to the Barbies. They don't have a problem at all with the fact that they are servants to the Barbies, essentially. And I think it would have been better if there were like subtle hints, subtle clues that like, yeah, the Kens don't like the way that they're being treated. They want to have the same equal respect that the Barbies give to themselves. And then fast forward later into the movie when the Kens take over, now it's the other way around. Now it becomes way too blatant, way too obvious, way too in your face. The ending of the movie also just kind of rubs me the wrong way. Now I know that earlier I praised the ending of the movie where Barbie and her creator are in the void and Barbie finds out her true purpose and whatever. Like, I praise that as being a beautiful moment, and you know, it is a beautiful moment, don't get me wrong. But then there's other aspects about the movie's ending that just kind of don't sit well with me, to say the least. After this scene, the movie ends with Barbie in the real world, and that's it. You don't see Barbie Land again. You see Barbie and her creator walk into the void, everyone in Barbie Land says goodbye, and that's it. That's the last you see of Barbie Land. And then the narrator at the end of the Barbie Land scene says something along the lines of like, one day the Kens will receive the same respect in Barbie Land that women will receive in the real world, or something like that. The Kens won't get any respect in Barbie Land until women get respect in the real world, or something along the lines. I don't remember how it goes exactly. Man, I don't know. I just feel like it's kind of a downer ending in a way when you think about it. You watch the movie, you see like the main conflict, and you think the movie's gonna end with like, you know, the Barbies and the Kens equal together. They have equal power together. And then the movie just doesn't show that at all. I guess it like vaguely implies it, but it doesn't show it at all. And I don't know, I just feel like that's kind of a downer ending, especially for a movie about Barbie of all things. I know someone in the comments is gonna defend this and be like, oh, but it's clever and subversive, and it's like, bro, it's a movie about a fucking doll. Be real with me, man. Do you realize how fucking stupid you sound, ironically, when you try to be all intellectual and whatever towards a movie based on a doll? Once again, and I cannot stress this enough, I'm not accusing this movie of being anti-male or anything like that, but I think it would have been better to have an ending showing like the Barbies and the Kens together, you know, showing how things are in Barbie Land, in this new and improved Barbie Land. Early in this video, I talked about how the ending half of Beetlejuice completely ruined any chances of me ever rewatching it. And it's kind of the same thing for Barbie. Granted, the circumstances are completely different, but it's the same principle where it's like, I don't really see much reason in rewatching this movie because I know how it ends, and I know that it doesn't have a very satisfying ending. I know that the movie tackles like men's mental health and stuff like that, you know. It's not an anti-male movie. It does acknowledge that like men should be respected as well, in addition to women. You know, you have the whole I am Kenuff stuff, you know, I'm just Ken is me, whatever. But I feel like it doesn't explore that enough, and I think it would be better if it explored it more. Yo, I'm being like 100% fucking serious with y'all when I say that, like, I swear to God, if this movie gives me gender dysphoria, if I develop gender dysphoria from a movie based on a doll made for little girls, Jesus, man, what a fucking timeline we live in. What a timeline. A movie based on a doll made for little girls has me potentially questioning, am I the right gender? Maybe I should have been a woman. Maybe that way I'll really understand this movie. Maybe I'd be able to appreciate it more. Maybe I would look at the movie's ending as a happy ending. I don't know. Oh yeah, one more thing before we move on. I was struggling very hard. I was suffering a low point in the summer of 2023 when this movie and Oppenheimer both came out, and now I cannot look at either of these movies, even if they're objectively good, or even if one of these movies is objectively good. It doesn't matter because I cannot look at either of these movies very positively. I was able to control this for most of 2024, but with how really things have been in 2025, I guess it's like caused me to kind of relapse, I'm not sure. And I look back on this time thinking like, you know, I could have done better. I could have prevented things from happening. I made this time for seemingly no reason, and now I have to be reminded of that low point every time I hear people talk about these movies. And believe me, I hear people talk about these movies a lot because these movies were absolutely massive. These movies will easily go down as two of the biggest movies of the 2020s, much to my dismay. I think now is the time to move on to number one, and let me just say, number one is going to be the complete opposite of Barbie in every single way, but it follows the exact same idea. It's a beloved, critically acclaimed movie that I don't like very much. Believe me when I say I have saved the most controversial for last. Let us proceed forward. I have broken a lot of rules throughout this list. First, I talked about Bruno. Then, I said Beetlejuice's name way more than 3 times. And now, for the number one movie on this list, for the number one movie that everyone loves except for me, I'm going to talk about Fight Club. Yes, that's right, Fight Club. Anyone that thought that I was a woman-hating incel or whatever just because I criticized Barbie, consider yourselves debunked, because I'm about to criticize every incel's favorite movie just like that. I watched this movie very recently in April for the very first time. I saw a lot of people say that this is one of the greatest movies of the 90s, if not of all time. When this movie first came out in 1999, it didn't do all that well, and as a matter of fact, it was considered a pretty controversial movie. But as time went on, the movie's reputation would improve while also getting worse at the same time. I'll explain what I mean by that. Generally though, the movie is considered a classic, so how come I don't like it very much? Well, allow me to explain. It's gonna be a bit of a long story. Now, before I go any further, I'm just gonna say that I will be including spoilers in this segment of the video. I will go into spoilers for this movie. I don't care if this is an old movie. I don't care if this movie is over 25 years old. I don't care if I don't like this movie. I could be very spiteful and spoil the movie without warning just because I don't like the movie, but I'm not doing that, okay? I'm not Satan. Even though I do not like this movie very much, I will acknowledge that this is not the kind of movie that you want to have spoiled. And so, anyone that has never seen this movie, but plans on watching it at some point, anyone that's never seen this movie, but they're interested in watching it at some point, click off this video and pretend that the video ended with the Barbie segment. Anyone watching this video that has either already seen Fight Club, or they've never seen Fight Club, but they don't care about it at all, they just want to hear me talk about why I don't like this movie, let us proceed forward. But don't come complaining to me in the comments about how I spoiled the movie, because I did warn you all that there will be spoilers. Now, I love the world of cinema. I love movies. I am highly passionate about movies, or at least I used to be, until 47 completely destroyed any chances of me joining the film industry. But in recent times, even ignoring 47, I find it harder and harder to really care about movies. I find it harder and harder to really talk about movies. Sometimes there are movies that I personally don't like, or God forbid, they are objectively bad movies. And despite that fact, it is extremely hard for me to go into detail as to why I don't like the movie. It is extremely hard for me to go into detail as to why the objectively bad movie is objectively bad. Take, for example, the previous movie on this list, Barbie. I don't like Barbie all that much. I went into detail. I explained why I don't like Barbie all that much. But I don't feel comfortable going into detail as to why I don't like this movie, because there are tons and tons and tons of people that don't like the movie either, except they don't like the movie for misogynistic, anti-woke reasons. And my main fear when it comes to criticizing a movie like Barbie is that I either end up attracting people that assume that I'm like a bigot or whatever just because I criticize Barbie, or I end up attracting actual bigots, people that they hate Barbie, but they hate it for misogynistic, anti-woke reasons. All it does is make me want to stay completely silent towards this movie, but then that's impossible for me to do. It is impossible for me to ignore this movie. This is one of the biggest movies of the 2020s, the biggest movie of 2023. It is practically inescapable. And then it's even worse when the movie in question is objectively bad. Now, I don't like Barbie at all, but I will not call it an objectively bad movie. It is far from that. This whole thing becomes much worse when the movie in question is objectively bad. Like, say for example, the recent Snow White remake. The Snow White remake is fucking terrible. Ain't nobody gonna try and defend this movie. Ain't nobody gonna try and say no, this movie is good. I have never seen anyone defend this movie. I've never seen anyone say it's not as bad as everyone makes it out to be. This is a movie that is practically unanimously hated by everyone, and yet it's also impossible to criticize at the same time, if that makes sense. And once again, that's because of the large amount of people that hate the movie for the wrong reasons. I want to celebrate the fact that this movie did horrible at the box office because it is a genuinely bad movie, but I cannot do that because number one, this movie is inevitably going to undo the damage that the Snow White remake did. This thing is going to make $1 billion, and I've already accepted that. And number two, most of the people that hated on this movie are anti-woke, misogynistic, racist people, and so it's hard for me to criticize this movie, despite the fact that it's objectively a terrible movie. It's hard for me to criticize it because then I end up running the risk of either attracting anti-woke, misogynistic people, or I have people just think, oh, I don't like Snow White, that means I'm a racist bigot or whatever. And it's no, this movie is fucking terrible. There is no universe where Snow White 2025 is a good movie. And yet, it just so happens, we live in the universe where it is much harder to criticize this movie than necessary. Now you're probably wondering, what the hell does this have to do with Fight Club? More specifically, what the hell does this have to do with me not liking Fight Club? Good question. Well, you see, Fight Club suffers the same problem that the Snow White remake suffers from, except this time, it's for a movie that's objectively good. Objectively, this movie is a masterpiece. Objectively, this movie is a 10 out of 10. Objectively, this is one of the greatest movies of the 90s, and maybe one of the greatest movies of all time. And yet I don't feel comfortable calling it any of those things because there are a lot of people that love this movie for the wrong reasons. I really want to love this movie. I want to say that this movie is amazing, but I can't. Out of the 6 movies that are on this list, this is the best one easily. I would say objectively, this is the best movie on the list. And yet, as confusing as it may be, this is the best movie on the list, but it's also the one that I come the closest to hating. Not because of the movie itself, but because of the stuff surrounding it. I mentioned before at the beginning of this video that I don't hate any of the movies that are on this list, I just simply don't like them that much. Fight Club is the one movie on this list that I come the closest to hating. And again, it's not because of the movie itself, it's because of the stuff surrounding this movie. It's because of the people that love this movie for the wrong reasons. This is a movie that I want to say that I love, and yet I'm unable to say that I love it because people will potentially get the wrong idea about who I am as a person by just simply saying, yeah, this objectively great movie is a masterpiece. So the movie follows Edward Norton's character, who doesn't have a name at all. He is frequently referred to as the narrator, and so I will refer to him as that in all future instances of me referencing this character. The narrator works a boring job at an office, living a boring life, suffering depression or at least something adjacent to it, I don't know, feeling like he doesn't have much purpose in his life. He frequently attends different group therapies just to feel something, just to have his situation improve. And then one night he meets Tyler Durden, a man who has a, let's say, very interesting viewpoint on society and what it takes to be a man and whatnot, the way that men have been in recent times, that sort of thing. And so the two of them start Fight Club. Throughout the movie, Fight Club garners more and more members. You have all of these men coming together to fight, not to win anything, not to get stronger, but just to feel something, just to have some kind of purpose in life. Now here is where the spoilers will come in. As it turns out, Tyler Durden doesn't exist. Everything that the narrator imagined Tyler Durden doing, he did it himself. It was the narrator, all on his own, that set up Fight Club. He was the sole person that came up with Project Mayhem, which is this, like, I don't know, terrorism, I guess. I don't know how else to describe it. And so the last quarter of the movie focuses on the narrator trying to fight this demon that he created, Tyler Durden, while also attempting to stop Project Mayhem. Now, the plot twist, I think, is amazing. It's a really good, really well executed plot twist. It's no surprise that it has gone down as one of the most iconic plot twists in any movie ever. And again, it is not the kind of plot twist that you want to have spoiled, so I warned you 2 times, so don't get mad at me for saying that I spoiled the movie's plot or whatever. There are a lot of subtle clues, subtle hints throughout the movie that implicate that, yeah, Tyler Durden doesn't exist, it's just the narrator and that's it. So how come I don't like this movie all that much? What is preventing me from calling this movie a masterpiece? Well, you know how earlier, during the Beetlejuice review, I went on about how there were certain characters in movies and TV shows where it's like, you miss the point if you idolize them, you miss the point if you like these characters. Yeah, Tyler Durden is one of the most famous examples of these kinds of characters. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the recent epidemic of incel, alpha, sigma, manosphere people, Andrew Tate and the people that look up to him, that sort of thing. People that have these very, strange, questionable views on what it's like to be a man, how men should be stronger than women, etc. And Tyler Durden over here is kind of like the prototypical example of that kind of person. He was Andrew Tate before Andrew Tate. There are a lot of people that watch this movie and they finish watching it thinking, wow, Tyler Durden is such a cool guy. I want to be just like him. Despite the fact that throughout the movie, he is shown to be a horrible person. And now, to the movie's defense, the movie makes it clear that no, Tyler Durden is not a good character. Tyler Durden is not a good person. Tyler Durden is not someone to look up to. Or I guess the narrator, whatever, the either or. There are a ton of people that look up to this character, even though they're not supposed to. And that's when you realize Fight Club has almost the exact same problem that the Snow White remake has. The Snow White remake is objectively a terrible movie, and yet it's very hard to criticize it because there are a lot of people that hate the movie for the wrong reasons. Fight Club is objectively an amazing movie, and yet it is very hard to praise it because there are a lot of people that love the movie for the wrong reasons. Now, I have seen a few of these "you miss the point if you idolize them" movies, and generally, I am able to separate the movie from their fan base. I can still acknowledge The Wolf of Wall Street is a masterpiece, and then also ignore the people that think Leonardo DiCaprio's character is someone to look up to. I can watch American Psycho and acknowledge it as a masterpiece, while also ignoring the people that think Patrick Bateman is someone to look up to. I could watch Joker 2019 and acknowledge it as a masterpiece, while ignoring the people that think Arthur Fleck is someone to look up to. That sort of thing. For some reason, it is significantly harder for me to do that with Fight Club. It is much harder for me to separate this movie from its fan base. Now, I have to make this obvious. Not everyone that loves a Fight Club is like this. Not everyone that loves Fight Club is an alt-right manosphere Andrew Tate supporter or anything like that. But there are a lot of people that are in that sort of group, and they think this movie is good for the wrong reasons. Not all Fight Club fans are incels, but all incels are Fight Club fans, if you get what I mean. I think what makes this movie different from all of these other movies is when I watched this movie for the first time. I watched Joker for the first time when it came out back in 2019. I would later go on to rewatch it a second time in October of 2024. October. That's a very important thing to note. It was before November of 2024. It was before hit the fan. I watched The Wolf of Wall Street for the first time near the end of 2023, around the 10-year anniversary of the movie, if I remember correctly. I watched American Psycho for the first time around either August or September of 2024, again, before hit the fan in November. Fight Club I would watch for the first time in April of 2025, after had hit the fan, and so it makes quite a difference, honestly. I'm not saying the incel Andrew Tate stuff didn't exist before 2025, because obviously it did, but I feel like it wasn't as bad as it is now. If I watched this movie before the incel Andrew Tate stuff became really widespread, or before it even existed, I would be a lot different towards this movie. I would be a lot more comfortable saying this movie is a masterpiece. But I watched it after it had gotten really fucking bad, and that negatively affects the way that I look at this movie. I don't want to call this movie a masterpiece because I don't want to run the risk of either attracting incels that think Tyler Durden is someone to look up to, or I end up attracting people that think I'm an incel that thinks Tyler Durden is someone to look up to just because I praise Fight Club. In general, I just don't see much of a reason to ever watch this movie a second time. Even looking looking past the incel fan base that this movie has, there's also the fact that, I'm just gonna say it, I f***ing hate Tyler Durden. I loathe this character, and I understand 100% that that's the point of the movie. The point of the movie is that Tyler Durden is an awful person. You're supposed to despise this f***ing guy. The fact that I hate Tyler Durden this much should show that I understood the assignment far better than most of the people that watch this movie. David Fincher should consider me teacher's pet just for that alone. I don't want to criticize this movie for being mean-spirited because I understand that's the point. The movie is supposed to be mean-spirited. This isn't supposed to be a happy-go-lucky, sunshine and rainbows, My Little Pony kind of movie. This is a dark, bleak movie. I get that, but I don't see any reason to ever watch this movie a second time. For being one of the most critically acclaimed movies ever made, for being considered an essential film bro cinephile movie, there is no rewatch value for this movie at all. I see no reason to ever be like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna watch Fight Club again. Why the hell not? I see no reason to do that at all. The extremely unlikable nature of Tyler Durden's character, combined with the fact that there are tons of people that think Tyler Durden is the good guy in this story, completely affects any chances of me ever watching this movie a second time. Once again, I understand that's the point, and the movie does criticize this fact. The movie makes it obvious that Tyler Durden is not someone to look up to, but that doesn't make it any less uncomfortable to watch. It's the exact same thing as with Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice makes it obvious that him trying to marry a child is a bad thing, but that doesn't make it any less uncomfortable to sit through. Fight Club makes it obvious that Tyler Durden is a horrible person that should not be looked up to. The movie condemns, not condones anything that this character does in the movie, and yet that doesn't make it any less uncomfortable to sit through. And the massive fan base this movie has of people that miss the point of the movie do not help matters out at all. I get the point. But does it really matter that I get the point when there are tons of people that have watched this movie that they miss the point completely, and these people that miss the point could end up being potentially dangerous to the real world? Does it really matter then that I specifically get the point? What should easily be a 10 out of 10 movie for me is instead like a 6 out of 10, maybe a 7 out of 10, I don't know. I think it's much easier for me to say I don't like Fight Club, or even I hate Fight Club, than it is for me to say I love Fight Club, but I don't look up to Tyler Durden, and I don't think Project Mayhem is a good thing. It saves me a lot of time and a lot of stress, even if I end up running the risk of coming off as a contrarian. You know what? So be it. If it helps ease the backlash, on the same night that I watched Fight Club for the first time, I watched fellow David Fincher movie Seven from 1995 for the first time as well. And unlike Fight Club, Seven is a movie that I can comfortably call a masterpiece. A movie that deserves to be called one of the greatest movies of the 90s and one of the greatest movies of all time. And I don't feel scared saying it. I feel confident and comfortable calling this movie a masterpiece. If only I could do the same thing with Fight Club. If only. And there you have it, folks. 5, technically 6 movies that a lot of people love that I don't like. I already know that people are probably gonna get mad at me for this video, but as I mentioned before, everything that's in this video is purely my opinion. It is purely the way that I look at these movies, and I cannot change that. I'm sorry. I really, truly am sorry, but I cannot look at these movies in any other way. That's just simply how I am when it comes to these movies. Anyways, that's about it. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to like, and if you're new to the channel, maybe consider subscribing, as it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you everyone for watching this video, and I will see y'all next time. Adios.